So let's say you've got the idea, you've got some of the people that you think could be right for this, and then it starts coming down to finances, and so if money is some kind of issue, which I assume it would be, for most people,
Sure.
how do you go about getting people on board? And I realize sometimes it's somebody who absolutely wants to do it because it's going to help build up their reel or get more experience, but if you're only able to offer a small token of money for the job, or asking somebody to essentially volunteer to do it, are there any strategies to that?
My strategy for pretty much everything in life is really to be honest and to be authentic, always right out of the gate. It's truly the principle by which I live, and it's held me in good stead, again, both personally and in terms of work. Going back to the LinkedIn groups for a second, so here's a perfect example. The show that you talked about when you did the intro, If I Had a Dime, which is the adult cartoon series that I've developed really largely. It's the project I have put the most effort into, and the one I still hang my hopes on the most, although it hasn't had a lot of traction thus far. I had an idea to create a comic book because it's a cartoon, and so a comic book is the most closely related, and animation is just outrageously expensive to do. No matter how many contacts I have and how many people I know, it's just a very, very expensive thing to do, and I haven't sort of been able to make that happen. So I had the idea to create a comic book, and someone who had looked at the show had made a comment that I thought was a great comment, criticism if you'd like, which was that he didn't feel that he really was getting to know the characters and their relationship with each other, and that he couldn't hear them. And he didn't mean literally the voices, although
Sure.
he couldn't do that either, but he meant more figuratively. And so I said, okay, well, that's a really great suggestion, and I wrote a short. And that short was really about the two main characters, and I thought it was a great way to understand who they were. It showed their essence, both of their essences, and how they interacted with each other. And then this goes back to what I said before about the playwright friend of mine who started dabbling in editing, and he's like, I can take that comic book and sort of give it some motion. I was like, great. So now I went with a comic book so I'd have static animation, and now I'm going to animate the static animation, which was great because then it was getting me closer to real animation, I thought. And so he did this really kind of Ken Burns, zoom in and zoom out, and some pushes and things appeared and disappeared. So it had movement to the comic book. And so once he did that, I was like, well, now we need to have a full audio track because now we can really sort of hear them. So I ended up, like I said, with this animated static animation. And I did all the voices, the main characters. I play one of them, a colleague of mine, a wonderful actress. Her name is Jan Newberger, Broadway actress from way, way, way back, and she's just terrific, plays the second lead character. And so we had done that, and then I had some colleagues of mine who I knew I wanted to play some of the other characters, but there's one character that appears in the short who's not actually in the full-on show, and she just had one line, but I needed somebody to record that. And I went onto LinkedIn into the 3 or 4 different voiceover groups that I'm in, and I literally posted, I'm creating this project. I don't have any money to spend on this, but I need one line recorded. Would anyone be willing to do it? And Aaron, I was so surprised at the wonderful response I had. People were so generous and so kind about doing it. Everybody was professional, so they all had their own recording studios, and they started sending me things. And then when people said, oh, I would have loved to have done this for you, I didn't have any that I really liked. And I said, well, I've received a bunch, but so far I haven't found what I'm looking for. If you'd be willing to send me a reading, I'd really appreciate it. But none of them were under the impression that it was definitely going to be like, oh, if they just record the one line, they'll be the person in it. And I ended up finding someone to do it that worked very well for me. I was very happy. And I said, I can give you a credit at the end, and you have my thanks. And she was happy to do it for that reason. And I have done things for people for that reason too. Of course, one, you hope and believe that if someone you do work for does get their project going, that they'll remember that you helped, and that might be somebody who'll be in a position to give you work later on. It happens quite often, and I certainly have a very clear mental list of the people that I owe things to in my mind, and if any of my shows hit, people that I'd love to be able to give work to. So you are honest, and you ask people to do it genuinely, and you'd be surprised how many will be willing to, like you said, for the experience or because they think maybe they're helping to develop a relationship that might be good for them, a credit on their resume, and certainly quid pro quo, you might be able to return the favor someday. And if there's a way to present it to somebody that there's something good they can get out of it, honestly, not trying to sell them a bill of goods, then I think that's a good way to present it to somebody, to say, I don't have money to give you, but here's why I think this might be a good thing for you to do.